What would you say if a cop ordered you out of your car right now? If you argue in that moment, a simple stop can go bad fast. And the worst part is you might think you're protecting yourself while you're actually making things easier for them. Before I reveal the exact words, hit subscribe right now so you can find this video again when you actually need it. And tap like, because what you hear today could stop you from talking yourself into handcuffs. Here's the reality. Most drivers don't get in trouble because they're dangerous. They get in trouble because they get emotional, start debating, and forget that the side of the road is not a courtroom. You do not win with a better speech. You win with better control. In this video, you're going to learn the 4 smartest ways to respond when an officer pushes, presses, or tries to pull you into an argument. You'll learn the exact line to use when they order you out, the exact line to use when they ask to search, the exact line to use when they start fishing with questions, and the exact line to use when the stop should be over. Let me show you exactly how to keep your cool without giving away your rights. Most people have no idea how fast a normal stop can turn into a roadside investigation. 1 minute you're handing over your license, the next minute you're answering questions about where you came from, where you're going, what's in your bag, why you seem nervous, and whether you mind if they take a quick look. That word mind is a trap. That casual tone is a trap, and your attitude matters more than you think. If you sound combative, the whole stop gets harder. If you sound calm and clear, you protect yourself better. I've analyzed over 200 body cam videos. The pattern is always the same. People who argue give the officer more time, more words, and more chances to build a case. So let's talk about the mistake that wrecks people first. You feel accused, so you try to win. You explain too much. You deny too much. You talk faster. You get sarcastic. You say stuff like, "I know my rights," but then you don't actually use them the right way. That backfires hard. Officers are trained to notice stress, anger, and fast talking. They may call it nervous behavior. They may call it inconsistent statements. They may call it resisting simple instructions. And once the stop gets tense, every second feels longer for you. Here's the reality. Your goal is not to beat the officer in an argument. Your goal is to get through the contact safely, calmly, and with as little damage as possible. The first thing you never argue about is a direct order tied to safety, especially stepping out of the car. If an officer says, "Get out," and you start saying, "No, tell me why," you are walking straight into a losing fight. You can challenge bad police work later. You do not challenge a basic exit order on the roadside. Here's exactly what you say. "Officer, I will comply. I do not consent to any searches." Word for word. Memorize that line. That sentence is powerful because it does 2 things at once. First, you are showing compliance. That lowers tension fast. Second, you are protecting your position by saying you do not consent. So you are not fighting the order, but you are also not opening the door to extra searching. This is 100% legal. You can comply with a lawful order and still make clear that you are not giving permission for more than that. Bad way. Most drivers say, "Why are you messing with me? I didn't do anything. I'm not getting out." Then the stop gets tense. Backup may come, and your simple ticket can turn into a much bigger mess. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, I will comply. I do not consent to any searches." Then you stay physically calm. The contact stays cleaner, and you stop giving them extra fuel. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. In Pennsylvania v. Mims, the court basically said, an officer can order a driver out of a car during a lawful stop for safety reasons. In plain English, you usually do not win that fight on the roadside. So if you argue that point, you are not defending your rights, you are burning them. Former police officers have confirmed this works. They'll tell you the same thing. The second you stop fighting the command and start using calm, clear words, the whole tone changes. Watch what happens when you use the right line. The officer says, "Step out," you step out, your hands stay visible, your voice stays normal. You are not admitting guilt. You are not saying yes to a search. You are just refusing to turn a bad moment into a worse one. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court because it helps show you did not consent even though you complied. That matters later if the stop gets reviewed by a judge. And if you don't do this, the danger is simple. Your roadside argument becomes the story, not the reason for the stop, not the weak evidence. Your behavior becomes the story. That's why this tactic matters so much. You are taking away the emotional fuel that makes stops spiral. Think you could stay this calm during a real stop? Let me know in the comments, because most people think they can until the lights hit their rearview mirror. The second thing you never do is argue about a search request by giving a big speech. This is where drivers talk themselves into trouble. The officer says, "You don't mind if I look, right?" And then you start explaining why there's nothing in the car, why you're a good person, why you're in a hurry, why you've never been arrested, why they should trust you. That is way too much. You do not need a speech. You need one clean sentence. You look at the officer and say this, "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." Those exact 8 words. Say them calmly. Say them once. If they ask again, repeat them the same way. Do not add jokes. Do not add attitude. Do not add a story, just that line. Here's why it works. Consent is one of the easiest ways police get into cars, bags, trunks, and containers without a warrant. If you say yes, you have made their job much easier. If you say no, they need some other legal reason. Maybe they think they have probable cause. Maybe they call for a dog. Maybe they do nothing. But your refusal matters because it keeps you from volunteering away a protection you already had. This is 100% legal. You are allowed to say no. Bad way, most drivers say, I guess that's fine, I have nothing to hide. Then the search starts. Your words are on body cam, and you made it harder to challenge later. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." Then you force the officer to rely on actual legal grounds instead of your permission. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection, and there is a reason for that. In Schneckloth versus Bustamante, the Supreme Court made clear that consent can make a search valid even when the officer did not warn you that you could refuse. In plain English, if you say yes, the court may treat that as enough. Florida v. Yemeno also matters. That case said consent can let officers look in places a reasonable person would expect the consent to cover. In plain English, once you open the door, you may not control where that search goes as much as you think. So don't argue. Don't say you need a warrant unless you actually know the situation. Don't puff your chest and try to sound tough. Just give the simple refusal. Calm beats dramatic every time. Watch what happens when you keep it short, the officer asks. You refuse. The camera records it. Your position stays clean. Even if they search anyway, you did not help them by consenting. And one more thing. If they say, "If you have nothing to hide, why not let me search?" Do not take the bait. Innocent people get searched too. Innocent people get misunderstood too. Your rights are not only for guilty people. Your rights are for you, right now, in that exact moment. The third thing you never argue about is their fishing questions. This is where stops quietly become investigations. You get asked where you're coming from, where you're headed, who owns the car, whether you've been drinking, whether there's anything illegal inside, why you seem nervous, why your friend looks tense, and on and on. Some of those questions may sound casual. They are not casual. They are collection tools. Every answer gives them something to compare, twist, or challenge. Listen closely because this is critical. Here's exactly what you say. "Officer, I choose to remain silent." If the stop is getting serious, you can add, "I want a lawyer." Keep your voice flat. Keep your face calm. Keep your mouth shut after that. That part matters. The power is not just in saying the line. The power is in actually stopping. Bad way. Most drivers say, "I'm just being honest. I came from my cousin's house or maybe my friend's place, and I only had one drink." Then the officer hears changing details, claims you sound unsure, and keeps digging. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, I choose to remain silent." Then you stop giving them extra pieces to build with. Here's why that line matters so much. Awkward silence by itself is not always enough. Clear words are better. In Bergheis versus Tompkins, the Supreme Court said you usually need to clearly say you are using your right to stay silent. In plain English, don't expect the court to read your mind. Say it out loud. Salinas v. Texas also showed something important. Silence without clearly claiming the right can get messy later. In plain English, the safest move is to state it clearly and then actually stay silent. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court because it creates a clean record. If the body cam shows you politely chose silence, that is very different from a video of you rambling, guessing, and contradicting yourself. Here's the reality. You cannot talk your way out of a trained interrogation game, but you can absolutely talk your way deeper into one. And let me be clear about one thing. You still give required documents when the law says you must. You still follow lawful orders. You still keep your hands where they can be seen. Choosing silence does not mean acting weird or hostile. It means you stop feeding the conversation that can hurt you later. If you keep chatting because you think you can clear things up, you may be doing the exact opposite. The officer is not grading your honesty in that moment. The officer is gathering material. Former police officers have confirmed this works because it changes the whole flow of the stop. When you stop answering fishing questions, the officer has fewer paths to wander down. The stop either stays about the original reason, or they need some real basis to push it further. That is a much safer place for you to be. Most people already clicked away. If you're still here, you're in the top 10%. Drop a comment saying, "I'm still here," because the next part is where you learn how to stop a delay before it grows teeth. The fourth thing you never argue about is the endless waiting game after the stop should already be done. A lot of drivers feel this part, but they don't know how to handle it. The officer gives back your license, keeps chatting, asks one more question, then one more, then says hang tight, then starts stalling. That is where people get trapped by their own confusion. They don't know if they can leave, so they stay and keep talking. Here's the trick they don't want you knowing. You can ask a simple question that forces the moment to become clear. You look at the officer and say this: "Am I being detained or am I free to leave?" Those exact words. You do not say it with attitude. You do not say it like a challenge. You say it like you want a clean answer. Bad way. Most drivers say, "Come on, man, are we done or what? This is ridiculous." Then the officer hears attitude, the stop gets more tense, and the delay often grows. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Am I being detained or am I free to leave?" Then the officer has to either end the stop or make clear that you are still being held. This matters because of Rodriguez versus United States. That case said police cannot stretch a traffic stop longer than needed for the mission of the stop unless they have extra legal reason. In plain English, they cannot keep you there just to go fishing forever. That does not mean you sprint away. It means you ask the right question and force the stop into the open. Let me show you exactly why this works. If the officer says you are free to go, you leave calmly. If the officer says you are detained, now they are owning that choice on camera. Either way, the fog clears. That helps you. It also helps later if your lawyer needs to challenge a delay. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection when a simple stop starts turning into a slow-motion investigation. Now tie all of this together because the law behind it is simpler than people think. Pennsylvania v. Mims tells you that arguing about getting out of the car is usually a losing roadside battle. In plain English, comply with the movement order, but do not volunteer more than that. Schneckloth v. Bustamante teaches you why your consent matters so much. In plain English, if you say yes to a search, you may have just handed over a protection you could have kept. Rodriguez v. United States tells you the stop cannot drag on forever without more reason. In plain English, police do not get endless extra time just because they feel curious. And Berghuis v. Tompkins is your reminder that clear words beat vague silence. In plain English, say you are remaining silent if that is what you are doing. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. And when you put those rulings together, the message is clear. Do not fight movement orders on the roadside. Do not consent to searches. Do not answer fishing questions. Do ask whether you are free to leave when the stop should be over. That is the framework. Short words. Calm tone. No debate. Now let me show you exactly how this sounds in a real stop. You get pulled over at night. The officer walks up and says you were speeding. You hand over your license and registration. So far, so normal. Then the officer asks where you're coming from, where you're going, whether there is anything illegal in the car, and whether you'd mind stepping out. Here's the wrong way. You say, "This is stupid. I wasn't speeding." "Why are you targeting me?" "I'm coming from my friend's place." "Well, actually my cousin's." "No, you can't search. You need a warrant. And I'm not getting out unless you tell me why." You can feel what happens next. The stop gets sharp. The officer now has your attitude, your changing story, your refusal to comply with a basic order, and your stress level all on camera. You are now the problem in their eyes. Now here is the right way. You hand over the documents. You stay calm. The officer asks you to step out. You say, "Officer, I will comply. I do not consent to any searches." Then you step out. The officer asks where you're headed and whether there is anything illegal in the car. You say, "Officer, I choose to remain silent." If they ask to search, you repeat, "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." If the warning or ticket is done and they keep stalling, you ask, "Am I being detained or am I free to leave?" Watch what happens. The whole context stays cleaner. You are not helping build the case against yourself. You are not turning the stop into a shouting match. You are not giving free consent. You are not filling dead air with harmful guesses. That does not guarantee the officer smiles and sends you on your way. Nothing guarantees that. But it gives you a much stronger position. It gives the camera a better record. It gives your lawyer better facts if things go sideways. And most important, it gives you control over the one thing you actually own in that moment, your words. Next week, I'm revealing what to say when cops claim they smell weed. Subscribe right now so you don't miss it, because that line gets people searched every single day, and almost nobody handles it the right way. So remember the 4 moves. If you're ordered out, comply and say you do not consent to any searches. If they ask to search, refuse with one clean sentence and no extra speech. If they start fishing with questions, clearly say you choose to remain silent. And if the stop should be over, ask whether you are being detained or free to leave. That is your power. Not yelling, not debating, not trying to out-talk the badge. Calm words, clear lines, smart timing. Hit subscribe so you catch the next video on smell-based searches. Smash that like button if this just saved you from a future mistake, and drop a comment telling me which line you're going to memorize first. Stay safe out there.